Hello and welcome to a little post-processing tutorial in which I'm going to show you how to do soft proofing in Photoshop. So if you remember, I think maybe a year or two ago, I did a series of videos on soft proofing using Lightroom. And if you go to my homepage under tutorials, if you scroll down, you find those free tutorials here under print preparation. In those tutorials, I show you how I prepare my photos for print. So first doing some general cleanup, removing some flaws, then some soft proofing and print sharpening, and finally the hard proofing. And if you watch those, you're already fine. If you use Lightroom, you can do all the preparation for print, but there are certain profiles, ICC profiles, which don't work in Lightroom. And just recently I ran into such a use case, and I had to do soft proofing in Photoshop then. The workflow is slightly different and I want to quickly show you how to do it. So let's first head over to Whitewall, and any other lab should also have this. So on Whitewall, if you scroll down to the bottom of the page, you see here under Service, Proofs and ICC color profiles. And whatever lab you use, usually searching on their site, you should find something like this. And on this page, you find a selection of ICC profiles for different papers, and that's what you need to do soft proofing. Now, if you scroll a bit up, you also find some information, and here you also see what I just said. Why doesn't Adobe Lightroom show some ICC profiles? And if you read it, it'll tell you that only the profiles in RGB color space will show up there and some others don't. For example, if you want to print on some canvas paper, those might not show up, and this is what happened to me. And also I had another print which I prepared for some chroma looks, metallic. This also didn't show up in Lightroom. So Photoshop, on the other hand, can show those profiles and you can do soft proofing there, and that's what we're gonna do. So first of all, whatever proofing you want to do, you download the ICC profile also from the other lab page. You just save them somewhere on your hard drive. For example, I have here some design resources with some ICC profiles, and for example the Canvas Glossy, you can just under Windows right click on them and then install the profile, which will automatically copy them to the right location so that Photoshop and Lightroom can pick them up later. I don't know how this is working on Mac, but a little Googling should show you. Maybe you can also just install them. Now, let's head over to Photoshop, where I have this photo here of the redwoods in Rotorua, which is one I prepared for print recently. Now, the process here in Photoshop, as I said, slightly different to Lightroom, where a lot of stuff is just automatic. Here we do a bit more manual preparation, which is, as a first step, going to Image and pressing Duplicate. So we create a duplicate of this original image. In Lightroom, you can just create a virtual copy, but here it makes sense to create a real copy, which you then use for your proofing. So I have the original file, which is the Redwoods Pool 9060-300, means 90 centimeters by 60 centimeters with 300 dpi. And now for the copy, I make it specific for a certain paper. So for this example, I just use Whitewall, Canvas Glossy, and I press OK. Now this opens up the photo right here, up in the tabs. And for the soft proofing, I like to have a side-by-side view. So I go to Window, Arrange, and just tile the photos vertically. Now I have them side by side. Now, if you remember from the video I did for soft proofing in Lightroom, when you get to such a side-by-side view, if you move around one photo, the other one will move around the same way. But as you can see here, for Photoshop, this doesn't work out of the box, but it will work if you hold a certain key for this. So normally, if you press space, you get the hand tool and you can move around the photo. And this will only move around one of the two. But if you also hold down Shift and space, now if I move one of the two photos, the other side will move the same way. And that's quite nice if you want to compare them during soft proofing. So this is one key combination you have to do. So Shift and space to get the hand and to get synchronized moving of the two. Now what we also want to do when we do soft proofing, we want to zoom in. So typically zooming in is Control space, and I think on Apple it's Command space to get the zoom you see here. But again, if I just zoom in now, it will just zoom in on one image. But yeah, maybe you can guess it. If I also hold down Shift, it will do a synchronized zoom. So you see, it zooms in both images. So whatever movement or zooming you do, in addition to pressing the typical keys, also hold down Shift. So for moving, Shift and space, and for zooming, Control, space and Shift. And if you want to zoom out, you need one more finger, Control, Alt, space and Shift. And then if you leave out Alt, Control, space, Shift, you zoom in. Yeah, so it's just taking a bit of time getting used to, but it's not too bad. And once you have it, you can just move around both sides in synchronous order. Now with those shortcuts out of the way, we have to set up the proof. So let's select this duplicate we have here. And now we go to View, Proof Setup, Custom. And here we can now select the ICC profile we want to use for soft proofing. So I already selected this Whitewall ICC Canvas Glossy here. And you can also see if I turn off the preview, just look here on the right side, how the colors get a little more subdued, the contrasts get a little softer. And that's quite typical for canvas paper. If I go, for example, with the canvas matte paper, you see there's a much more drastic difference. You see all the contrasts are going away, or not all the contrasts, but it's getting really flat, and that's because of the paper. Typically the glossy papers are much closer to what you see on the screen than the matte papers are. So for this matte, I would have to do much more changes than I have to do for the glossy. And that's also important, and the reason why you need to do soft proofing if you want to ensure that whatever paper you print on, it will look close to what you intended it to look, so what you see on your screen. So let's just press OK with this glossy paper having been set up. And you also see up here, if the profile is active, it will show up here, versus on the other side there it just says RGB 16. And here it says RGB 16 Whitewall ICC Canvas Glossy. So this will tell you here on the right side, the profile is active. Now there's another shortcut. If you press Ctrl Y, you deactivate it, and Ctrl Y again, you activate it. And I guess on the Mac, it's Command Y. So with the profile active, we can now do the adjustments. So let's first zoom out a bit, Ctrl, Alt, space and Shift, and then Shift, space, moving it around a bit. Let's now go here onto the right side into the layers and start with the curves layer, which we can use to make some first adjustments. So bringing back just a touch more contrast, because you see on the right side, there's a little less contrast because of the profiles. You see the before and after, so it's getting a little more subdued. And the curves layer will usually take care of that. So I'm gonna introduce this adjustment layer, go with a slide S curve, and now what I can do, you see already it's getting much more contrasty and vibrant. I can just tune the opacity. And here it also helps now to zoom in a bit, just to see some areas more closely where you have the vibrant colors, and now fine tune the opacity of this curves layer to get those look similar again. You see the before and the after, so we're much closer now. Now let's move to another area. It's usually good to just check a few, for example, where you have different colors here, for example, the greens, and then go maybe down into this corner. And you see for this paper, a simple curves layer seems to do the trick already. Now for other papers, it might not be that easy. You might need more than a curves layer. For example, you can just take anything from here, a hue saturation layer where you can target specific colors, maybe even a photo filter to warm or cool the complete image, just trying to get both sides to match in terms of color and in terms of contrast as good as possible. Also be aware that for some papers, for example, the matte papers, it will not work 100% because they just can't display such a range of colors, such deep black tones and the pure whites which you have on the screen and also on glossy papers. So you just try to get them as close as possible. And if you can also do a hard proof later, basically ordering a print of the image as I showed in the other videos on my homepage, which you then compare with what you did in the soft proofing. But I don't want to go into those details. I rather want to show you some other important settings or checks you can do here in the soft proofing. So first of all, there's something that happens to me a lot. For example, I just forget to hold down Shift, I move this around, I zoom in, and now both are no longer in sync. How do I get them back to sync quickly? Just go to Window, Arrange, and then down here you can just press Match All, and now voila, both are in sync again. And now if I move it around, they show the same areas. So this is quite handy. Another thing that can be quite important is to check if the gamut or color range of your paper can fully display what you have here on the image. And for this, you go to View, and here you see this gamut warning. And there's also a shortcut, Shift Control Y. And if you activate it, you see that here in certain areas, you see those gray areas, basically tells me that here the colors that I'm currently seeing on the screen will not be 100% matched on the paper. So they're basically outside of the color range that the paper is able to reproduce. So this is a bit of guessing here, though. Those colors will basically be cut, and yeah, you don't really have a preview of how those colors will then look on the paper. So it's better to try to avoid those clippings here and rather do during soft proofing some slight adjustments to the curve to not have those clippings and have a controlled representation. So basically tuning your soft proof in a way that it matches the original as close as possible without the gamut warning being active. Otherwise, you basically leave everything to the printing process of which you don't have any control, and this will just interpolate or cut some colors, and you might get a result which you didn't predict. So this is also something, I mean, for smaller areas where you just have darks, blacks, it's not that bad. But for some papers, which often happens, you might have those gamut warnings in blue areas or some magenta areas. And if you get it there, I think it's very important trying to avoid them, because the colors on the paper might then look completely different. So this is an important thing I wanted to mention. And yeah, I think now you have all the tools you need to also do soft proofing in Photoshop. And I hope you liked this video. If so, leave a thumbs up, subscribe for more, and yeah, see you in the next video. Bye.